Is for today, everything's okay, everything's okay. Never comes again, another day like yesterday. Is for today, everything's okay, everything's okay.
Good morning, everybody. I am going to range far afield on this one and swim through some waters that may press a few buttons, but I think as you listen to me talk through it, you will see that what I'm saying is not meant to insult anybody. It's concerning gender and gender stereotypes, and I hope to. No, I'm not an expert. I'm not a biologist. I have not done research on what are possibly inborn characteristics of particular gender. I have no expertise in the broad array of gender expressions and what's going on now where the culture is evolving to recognize a broader spectrum. So I don't speak to that because I don't have a right to speak to that. I don't have any expertise in that. Maybe going back to some more primitive gender stereotypes that were present and assumed when I was a child. But I was thinking through the other day, there's a statement that somebody had, it's just some silly Instagram post or something, and people will post some stereotype, trying to elevate one gender, but in so doing, they sort of need to put down the other gender, the sort of thing that's sort of like a backhanded insult. Not even that serious, right? Like sometimes people say, well, thick women are just, do it better or whatever. And I'm like, no, I get you're celebrating, but at the same time, you're basically telling every thin woman who sees that they're not as good. It's like there's no way to make that statement that you don't end up insulting everyone who isn't that. Anyway, so to get to the meat of it, the statement that has irritated me since I was young because I experienced very different things and saw very different things is that people will generally really say, women are much more empathetic than men. And I can tell you, at least anecdotally, that's just not true. And that's not an insult to women. That doesn't mean that women are not empathetic, and that doesn't mean when I attempt to bust that stereotype and break that box that we try to put men and women into, I'm not doing it to go, oh, women aren't as good as we say they are, or they don't have the special qualities. Women have special qualities. I'm also trying to break them out of a box that they've been put into that as a human animal, it's just silly. It's just really, really silly. So I will start with the statement that when there are human beings who are empathetic, and maybe there's biological gender differences in how that plays out. I'm not making a statement to that because, again, I have no expertise. Or maybe it's socialization. And I do see that we definitely socialize men and women differently. So I'll speak more to the socialization. I have no opinion about whether there are inborn biological differences because I don't know. It's not my area of expertise. But when there are women who are empathetic, it gets filtered through gender socialization. When there are men who are empathetic, it gets filtered through gender socialization. But the statement that women are more empathetic than men is just simply untrue. I realize this, and I'll describe some ways in which this is not true, and some ways in which women get trapped with the idea because I think they've been socialized to believe that they're supposed to be. And I know that I was socialized to believe that I was not supposed to be. And I spent most of my teens and some of my 20s behaving and talking in a way that was very callous towards violence, towards cruelty to children. For men, the ability to joke about violent things and act like we just think it's funny is deeply socialized in. There are some men who are really like that, who just think it's funny, and I don't have an opinion about that. You know, it's how they deal with that. And there are some men like me who were always deeply bothered by violence, cruelty, domination of one living thing over another. I was deeply bothered by it, but I just joked a lot. In fact, I pushed the limits far further than other people would to cover for the fact that I had a deep empathy for any creature that was suffering the domination of another creature. Um, on the other side of it, I personally know many women who are not empathetic at all. But because of socialization, and a lot of you will recognize this, if you're raised in the South or um, whatever, or like women in my family who have beautiful qualities, but empathy isn't, you know, deep empathy isn't really one of them. You'll see the men, if they see something that elicits empathy, you'll see the men kind of go quiet and sort of look, and you know they know what's going on, and you know they're sort of bothered, and they may even really think about doing something, and they may follow through and see if they can do something to alleviate suffering. Whereas the women will be like, oh, I just think it's just horrible. But you can see when they're saying it, it's just something they say. They don't really actually give a crap. They don't care. They're not going to do anything about it. It's just the obligatory response because they've been socialized as a woman to think that they're supposed to feel empathetic or sympathetic about that thing that's happening. Oh, it's terrible. Oh, it's just terrible what they did. That person doesn't care. And I'm not saying they're supposed to. So don't get it twisted up. I'm not holding up empathy as this one trait that makes you a better human being. And we've said that women are more empathetic, and now I'm taking it away, thereby devaluing women. No, it's just one trait among a bunch of adaptive traits and things that can make human beings work together really well and things that can be of value with human beings. And we have unfairly and inaccurately attributed far more empathy to the females of the human species than the males, and it's just not true. It just isn't true. It's just when you filter these things um, through gender socialization, it just becomes a stereotype, this sort of like given truth that, well, it's just true, and it isn't. Um, so again, you know, you see that culture, like you'll see that a lot in the South. It's like, oh, the poor dear. And I used to look at those women when I was a child and go, you don't give a crap. Like you don't care at all. You're just checking a box of just like, well, I'm supposed to say something that shows that I care, but they don't care. They don't care. They're not going to do anything about it. They're not going to lose sleep over it. They don't actually have a feeling in the moment. Now, you know, again, don't get super black and white with this stuff because for anything that I describe, I'm describing it to say that you can sort of feel where that person is and whether they actually have empathy or not. And then there may be someone who says things like, oh, the poor dear, and you can tell that they mean it and they feel it. So it's not just about that kind of culture where women say, oh, it's just terrible. Well, there might be a woman who says that who actually feels it and you can see in their face. Um, you can take, for example, you know, my father, who's very intellectual and who no one would ever call empathetic. And I know from having watched his face that he really struggled with, well, he was pretty narcissistic. So sometimes he was very, very cruel. But when he was seeing cruelty happen outside of him, and it wasn't his political group aligned against someone who he thought deserved something, you know, he could have moments of deep empathy where you could see things really, really bothering him. Um, and again, I've grown up with and known women where it's like you can tell it doesn't bother them at all, not one iota. And so you also get into situations where um, a lot of times we don't even really know how to recognize true empathy. So let's get into that a little bit more deeply, what that means. Let's start with sympathy, right? I did a podcast about empathy, sympathy, deep communion, what true connection means, and so I'm just going to do a little bit of a review. When I was a kid, being sympathetic was the good thing that we felt like meant you're a good person and you care about other people. And then years later, talking to my therapist, she's sort of like differentiated empathy and sympathy, and I didn't get it. I was like, I don't know what the hell she's talking about. Like, which one's good? Is one bad? Like, I don't. And over the years, I developed a much deeper understanding. Sympathy, though can feel good, is not actually that compassionate. Sympathy simply means I feel what someone else feels. And that is always dictated by tribal um, identifications. So if I am an extreme conservative or an extreme liberal, and I see an extreme liberal in an argument with someone, and that extreme liberal is getting angry, and I get angry, it's not that I'm so compassionate with the other liberal. It is that I'm simply having my own reaction about my own stuff. It's really about me, right? Even someone who, for example, sees an abandoned dog. Let's say this is a person who was abandoned as a child and was left at a gas station, or some horrible, terrible thing that they felt great grief and abandonment. And so they grow up, and anytime they see a stray dog, they just start crying, and they're like, no, and they need to catch that dog and try to take him somewhere or find him a home. That's beautiful. Like, let's not discount the wonder of it, the beauty of it, and how much good that they're gonna do. But that's sympathy. They're projecting how they felt as an abandoned child onto this animal. And there's more empathy because they're not an animal. Well, they're a human animal, but pardon me, guys. I'm turning into an old man. Like my wife teases me, like I walk around the house like harumphing and making these throat clearing sounds. It's like, when did this happen? For crying out loud. I've suddenly become this guy who's always sniffing and harumphing. There's some place where you tip over. I don't know when it is. Where there's very clear indicators of the fact that you're an old man. And it has nothing to do with gray hair or whether you grow a beard or not. It has a lot more to do with how grouchy you are and whether you walk around harumphing all the time. Apparently, I'm there because I'm doing it here on the podcast, and I don't even want to pause the podcast to stop and like clear my throat. By the way, guys, today's Saturday. Well, this is Thursday was my birthday, so I just turned 57. And yeah, this has been going on for a couple years, and it's really in the last year that I unabashedly walk around clearing my throat, harumphing and arfing, and maybe I'll go outside and harumph emphatically and then spit in the garden. I'm not sure why I find this so funny right now, and it has nothing to do with the podcast, but it's hilarious. Old age and these sort of indicators I just find extremely entertaining. Oh my goodness. This is partially also due to I got the cold like a month and a half ago, and it's completely gone. I feel great, but for whatever reason, I just continue to have a little tiny bit of inflammation of the tissues, so I feel a little bit clogged up, and there seems to be an urgent need to harumph. I think it's also just the word makes me laugh. I go around emphatically harumphing. Sir, I'm speaking directly to you. If you're a male who's probably done the first half of your life already, and you walk around your house emphatically harumphing and irritating your wife and kids, you have indeed officially become an older gentleman. So careful with the emphatic harumphing. All right. All right. Let's get serious here. Enough of with your emphatic harumphing. So we were talking about sympathy, right? Sympathy helps make the world go around. But I also talked about in a past podcast how it's also very, very dangerous because it's basically grounded in, anchored in, I feel what someone else feels because they actually align with my experiences. And the problem is that gets, the more primitive that gets, the more it gets into aligning with race, religion, right? So let's say I was raised in a Christian culture. I no longer claim any denomination or any religious affiliation, but I was raised in a Christian culture. So that's always part of my culture at the very least. So let's say someone is attacking or lampooning Christianity and I feel offended and angry on behalf of Christianity, but then someone attacks and lampoons Islam and I kind of go, well, they kind of deserve it. Well, that really demonstrates the failings of sympathy. I sympathize with the Christian because I identify with the Christian, at least culturally, and then somehow maybe I view Islam as different enough or maybe a threat to my own ideology, and then I lose the capability to actually feel for those human beings who, like me, at the very least are culturally associated with the belief system or they believe deeply. And when someone makes fun of or insults their religion, rather than feeling empathy for them, rather than caring and going, you know what, I don't have to agree with them. I don't have to believe anything they believe, but they're human beings and they want basic respect for their beliefs and their culture the same way I do. And I don't like what I'm seeing. Like, this bothers me. That's empathy. Sympathy tends to end where identification ends. I thought through this a lot when I was studying philosophy, and you get into ethics and start thinking through treatment of animals, et cetera, et cetera. And you can see human beings just childishly denying any possibility that other mammals, animals, are capable of experiencing torment and torture and pain the way we are, because it's convenient for us to inflict misery and suffering and death on them. And we don't want to accept the moral implications that at the very least we're risking, or that maybe we have a pretty damn good idea that we're inflicting suffering and torment and torture on them. So we're just like, well, you know, they have more primitive nervous systems and they don't experience pain the way we, like, you hear it, it's just stupid. It's just stupid. My daughter's always like, Dad, that's a bad word. I don't think I'm ever going to get rid of it. Because things like that are just stupid. It's just stupid. It's just so childish. Shut up. You know damn well that if you take a frog and slowly burn off its leg, it is experiencing excruciating pain and misery and fear, and it then dies in that, and that is a horrific death. Shut up. Just shut up. Anybody who runs that BS, yeah, don't get in a conversation with me, because you know that you're stupid, and I do too. Yeah, we got to stop with that bullshit. But that comes from that comes from sympathy, where we are only able to feel for other beings if we identify with them. And if we don't identify with them, we're like, yeah, they don't feel pain. Nah, it's not a problem for them. We can do whatever we want to them, right? It's the cute animal problem. Oh, the puppy dog. Oh my God. Oh, the weeping and wailing. If a puppy dog gets hit, oh my God. And let's say it's an alligator. And you can show a video of someone running over an alligator and then backing up and running over him again and blah, blah, blah. And you'd be shocked at the number of people would be like, good, kill that vicious thing. Really? Who's the vicious thing in that situation? It's the human. It's the human. The vicious thing is the human in that situation. You think because it's an alligator, it doesn't experience fear and pain? Well, they have more primitive. Shut up. That's just stupid. You know it's stupid. It's just convenient for us, because then we get to kill the stuff we want to kill, and we get to eat the stuff we want to eat. And then we don't have to take responsibility for our immorality in relationship to other living things. And yes, I'm aware that plants also, I'm not getting into the conversation, or you should be vegan. We're like, I don't know how to solve that problem. I don't know how to solve that problem. I'm simply not interested in lying about what it is when we inflict pain and torment on anything. I think I've shared this before, that when I was in college, I worked at a veterinarian clinic, and I had this come to Jesus moment, this startling experience where we would do, when dogs would come in with mange, with various, like sometimes it's just dry skin, sometimes it's an allergy, but sometimes it's a skin mite or some infection in their skin. So what you do is you take a scalpel and you do a little bit of scraping, and you scrape and get a little bit of layer of the dermis, and then you put that on a slide with a little oil, whatever kind of oil you use, mineral oil maybe, and you put that under a microscope and you look, and you can see the mites, these ugly alien crab-like things, just kind of like swimming around in there with all their weird appendages. Oh yeah, gross. Oh, this poor puppy dog. Really? What about the mite? It doesn't get a chance to live? We don't care about that? No? Because it's not cute? Not a cute puppy dog? We can run over the alligator, but don't hit a puppy dog? Yeah. Let's wake up. Let's grow up. So anyway, so I went and told the doctor. I was learning the different types. Went and told the doctor, oh, this dog has this mite, and then they give it a medicated bath. And, I got really busy, and I came back like 10, 15 minutes later, and there's a light underneath the slide to help you see. And I looked, and I was seeing signs of intense distress. This thing, instead of languidly swimming, was jerking and frantically moving. And I was like, what the hell? And then I realized, oh, that light is on the brightest. It's really hot. And I'm unintentionally cooking this thing. I've elevated the temperature of that oil, and this thing is now cooking and is fighting for its life. And this is where humans are so childish, right? To this day, there are going to be so many people who tell you that thing is like so primitive, its nervous system is so primitive, and all you're seeing is just an instinct. It's just nature's instinct to try to preserve it. It's not actually experiencing that. It's not the same thing. You can't anthropomorphize, you can't project how humans feel onto animals. Shut up. That is so asinine. If you were a moral person at all, what you would say is, hey, maybe logically I can't prove that that thing is in terrible suffering, but given the fact that it's displaying exactly all the same behaviors, if I took a human and dropped them in a vat of boiling oil, they would act exactly the same way. They would be thrashing around frantically. Given that that super obvious indicator is there, and given that you have an agenda to let yourself off, it is super uncomfortable to acknowledge that I might be inflicting terrible suffering on a living creature, and your agenda is to protect yourself. Forget about what you know. Just being intellectually honest and logical tells you that there's probably a pretty high risk that that thing is experiencing the same thing a human experiences. That how complex the nervous system is not an indicator of how much you can suffer, how difficult to suffer. Yeah, humans, because we have a complex brain, suffer lots of psychological crap that we impose on ourselves. But when it comes to out and out just physical pain and excruciating pain and misery, by all indications, all living beings experience that. It's just childish and immoral that we try to hide from ourselves and try to make excuses. Well, the ugly things don't. They don't matter. The cute things matter. Or the things with more complex nervous systems really suffer, but the ones that shut up. You have an agenda. You're just trying to let yourself off the hook, because if you accept that that's what's happening, we have to admit, I don't know what to do about it. We need to eat meat. We need to eat plants. All those things live. Like, life is consuming. Like, I don't have the answer, but the fact that you don't have the answer doesn't mean that you lie to yourself about what's happening. Okay, but I digress. So my realization in seeing that thing suffer wasn't like, oh, I'm going to stop inflicting death on this. I work at this place and I'm going to help give the dog a medicated bath, and it's going to kill those things, and the dog's going to be comfortable and the mites are not. I'm just not going to pretend, and I'm not going to inflict needless, right? I'm not going to sit there and be like, screw that thing. It's ugly and I don't identify with it, therefore I can do whatever I want to it. You hear how primitive and silly that is. But that's the failing of sympathy, because sympathy is based on identification. I identify with that creature. I identify with that creature. We identify deeply with dogs because they're capable of displaying the kinds of affection and attachment that we. So suddenly we're like, oh, dogs can suffer terribly. And some people are like, I hate cats, they're so stupid. Cats can suffer terribly, they can feel abandoned, whatever, but they're just a little bit more aloof, and we don't identify as much with that. And so we're like, yeah, screw the cats. That's so childish, it's silly. That's the limit of sympathy. Empathy is, I don't need to identify with it. If I can intellectually and from a warmth and a place in my heart go, I'm living unconscious and that thing is living unconscious at whatever level, and it's displaying signs of distress. Now you can go, oh, you don't really know. Yeah, nobody really knows. I might be living in a matrix where every other human being is just, right? I might be some experiment. I'm the only actually conscious living thing, and every other living being on the face of the planet is just some manufactured digital avatar to give me an experience. And in fact, nobody else experiences suffering. And it would be totally fine if I just randomly poured gas on people and lit them on fire because nothing's happened. I can't prove that anything else experiences anything because I'm not them. So you can't end that at animals or plants. That argument is a specious argument. Because if you go with that argument, you don't know that anything else experiences anything. You don't know that other humans experience anything. Because you're not that human. So it's a silly argument. The only moral argument is to go, well, when I see these things like a tightness around my eyes, or I'm squirming terribly, or screaming, please stop, when I'm doing that, I'm in excruciating pain or discomfort. And I deeply seek the empathy of others and kindness and help in alleviating my pain. So maybe I should just go with, when I see those physical behaviors or vocalizations or whatever, I see in a creature deeply trying to avoid a stimulus that I'm applying to it, maybe I should just not be an ass, a self-serving ass, and just admit that I'm probably inflicting some pretty serious discomfort on it. That's not a difficult leap. That's first grade logic. It's only when you're self-serving and trying to let yourself off the hook that we do anything else. Okay, so that's the failing of sympathy. And so let's come back to the gender issue. If you can't tell, is some of my favorite subjects is ethics and treatment and experience and how to relate to other living beings. What you will see, so we were originally going on breaking some gender stereotypes and not doing it to insult women, but to say that women have been trapped in this box. Yeah, there are empathetic women, there are empathetic men. I've found no pattern whatsoever that says either gender has more empathy than the other. I don't find women more empathetic than men at all. I just find them to be normal humans. Some of them are empathetic, some of them are not. Some of them are sympathetic, some of them are not. Some of them are sociopathic, some are not. Some women are violent, some women are not. Some women are full of rage, some women are not. Some women are full of aggression and attempts to dominate. One of our problems culturally is that we don't acknowledge this. We have this stereotype that men are violent. Men are violent. Testosterone actually entitles us to more, and there's more lean muscle mass, so there's maybe a little bit more of an ability to do it. All that means is that women's rage and violence gets channeled into whatever we've socialized them to have access to, which often is social pressure and psychological and emotional pressure. As many women as are subjected to domestic violence by men being physically out of control, there's a completely unspoken reality of men who are being psychologically, emotionally brutalized by violent, rageful women who will absolutely tear them down to nothing, put them under the ground verbally. The amount of aggression and rage that comes out in that woman is stunning. But there are two things society will do. One, society will say if she's doing it, it's his fault. And they'll blame the victim, because we have this thing of like, well, women can't be powerful, women can't be aggressive, women can't be violent. And if they are, it's only because they're a victim of men. This is bullshit. There are lots of women who are victims of men. This does not justify women's domestic violence towards men. And we know that men's domestic violence towards women is not justified. By the way, those women who are rageful, they also hit men and attack men, or they attempt to elicit physical confrontation. The number of cases of men who are with violent, domineering, angry women, where when it's an argument and the man says, like, this happens so often, it's nuts that nobody talks about it. How often this happens. As often as there is a man who loses his temper and dominates and hits or shoves a woman, this is anecdotally almost or maybe as common. A woman who will pick a fight with a man because she's angry, and when the man goes, whoa, this is getting out of control, I'm losing my temper, you've already lost your temper, I'm gonna leave, The number of cases where that woman will lose her shit and block his exit so that he cannot leave, attempting to elicit, and then even get physical and shove him and say, because she's trying to elicit a physical confrontation, but she doesn't want to initiate it, because once he initiates it, then she can go off on him and hit and blow. Like, you guys don't want to believe this, but this shit is common. This happens all the time, not with women, but with angry, violent women. But nobody talks about it because only men are angry and violent. That's bullshit. Are women human? Are men human? Anger and violence is natural to the human animal. I'm not saying this to beat up on women and say, oh my God, like they're so much worse as human. No, they're angry and violent for the same reason the men are, for the same reason everyone is. Because if you take the human animal and deeply mistreat them and dominate them for centuries and take advantage of their bodies and use them to procreate without any empathy or sympathy whatsoever for the massive demand that has on a woman's body, and just go, well, this is normal nature. But yeah, the fact that nature made it that way does not mean that it doesn't come at huge cost to that human. You do that to a human being for centuries and suppress them and tell them that politically their opinion means nothing and that they're not mathematically as smart and they're not as capable of running machinery, and treat them like children and suppress them, what the fuck do you think is going to happen? Like every animal on the face of the planet, you suppress something that badly and enslave them that badly, and they're going to become violently angry. I'm not mad at women for them being angry and being violent, and I don't want domestic violence to happen in any way, shape, or form. What I'm saying is we've abused women so badly, and there are all of these outcomes, and we pretend that it's insulting women to say that there are these conditions that happen, that there are these mental health situations, or that they initiate domestic violence, or that they have lost all sense of empathy, all ability to empathize. Or some of them are just born, they're just not particularly empathetic or not particularly nurturing. There's a lot of women like that. And we need them in business, and we need them in like whatever. They have other qualities, right? But we put them in this box, and two things happen. Number one, we're abusing and neglecting women when we put them in that box. And we absolutely insist you have to pretend you're empathetic. Well, now they have to fake it. They have to go, oh, that's terrible. Aw. How many women do you know who say shit like that? And you're like, you don't care. It's okay that you don't care. There are lots of men who don't care. It's just we're socialized to feel entitled to not care. You're a woman and you don't care? Fine. Aw. Aw. Oh, that's terrible. Stop. You don't care. And we shouldn't be forcing you to act like you care because you're a woman, because we've constructed this stereotype that women are more empathetic. They're not. They're just like every other human on the face of the planet, and they happen to have some biological differences and whatever. Again, where you get into the fluidity of gender, I'm not addressing that because I have no expertise. None. I just make space for all of it. If you come to me and you're like, this is what I am, cool, I respect you, I accept you as you are. But I'm not addressing, but what I'm saying is with this binary sort of gender stereotypes that are still so deep out there, we're simultaneously neglecting and abusing women and men when we make statements like women are so much more empathetic than men. No, they are not. They have this a broad spectrum of behaviors and presentations and personalities. There are some women who lack so much empathy that they're far along the spectrum of narcissism. But then they become a toxic covert narcissist because they're not allowed to use that. If a man is far along the spectrum of narcissism, he goes into investment banking where he's risking billions of dollars of people's money, and he doesn't lose sleep at night because he's not even worried about it. But he does a brilliant job because he's not worried about it. And we're like, oh man, what a brilliant guy. Well, there are lots of women like that. They just don't get to do it because they got locked out and they've had to grow up going, that's terrible, even though they don't care because they don't have that much empathy for that situation. And they would be a brilliant investment banker because you need a certain level of narcissism to be good at that. You need a certain level of narcissism to be a surgeon, to go, I am going to open up this person's body and I'm going to treat them mechanistically and I'm going to know deeply how all of this stuff works and blah, blah, blah. I'm going to spend 6 hours doing this. I'm going to sew them up. Nah, forget it. I'm going to let someone else sew them up and I'm going to walk away from the situation. I'm going to do another one. And not once am I going to visit that human being and go, oh man, how are you feeling? Like, this must be really overwhelming. Like, no, somebody else is going to do it. A certain level of narcissism is really healthy and functional. But if you take women, a woman who has that level of narcissism, and you impose this box on her that women are supposed to be more empathetic, and she then tries to suppress her narcissism, and she views herself as toxic, she becomes a covert narcissist because she is somewhat narcissistic, but she doesn't get to use it in an adaptive way. And then she has to fake empathy. But the truth is she's pretty self-serving. Well, that's the definition of a covert narcissist. Is someone who fakes empathy, but in the end, they're making everything about themselves and their emotional state and what their agenda is. That's a covert narcissist. Well, we just created it. And then some really insightful, brilliant therapist will see that woman and be like, covert narcissist. That woman is a covert narcissist. And we've diagnosed her, and it's accurate to her presentation, but nobody's talking about why she's a covert narcissist. You understand, I'm not saying this to beat up on women or to go, they're not as good or as wonderful as we say. You're not helping women by putting them in this box. And you're not helping men by taking away the beauty of how deeply empathetic. And in fact, when men are socialized, men's socialization, when their empathy is filtered through it, is a beautiful, beautiful thing, because there is a tendency to problem solve. And so there's a tendency, a man will very quietly get to work and do everything he can to alleviate that painful situation for that person. And he doesn't give a shit whether you go, oh, you're so caring and loving. He doesn't care, because actual empathy isn't about how I feel about it. Actual empathy is I recognize that you are having difficulty experiences and feelings. And I just at a deep level, as one life to another life, I want to help alleviate your suffering if I can. So men's empathy can be beautiful and really, really powerful. And when we put women in that box and put men in that, but we're taking that away and ignoring that. Women are not more empathetic than men. That's not a bad thing about women. And I'm not trying to add something to men. That's just a fact. We got to get over this silly crap of these ridiculously primitive black and white gender differentiations. It's asinine. Knock it off. It's silly. It's not even factual. It's not logical. It's just self-serving crap where we set one gender up with this super idealistic thing that could have worked in the past. It may have had some social value. Like if you lived in a time where 80% of men, the only way they could make a living was either to brutalize animals, raise crops, or was to become a soldier and routinely murder, rape, and plunder, and literally rape, and that's just normal, and you're not supposed to be traumatized, and you're supposed to be able to come over and come home and have a wife and raise it, like whatever, that's just normal. And then women had to run a whole household and keep food coming in, you know. Maybe it was like, oh, we need to believe that she's more capable of feeling what our kids feel and being attuned to the community. And we need to believe that this man doesn't feel anything about the fact that he can skewer someone on a spear multiple times in a day and get up tomorrow and just still be a normal human. Maybe we needed that. But societies are constantly constructing bullshit ideas around people, around black people, around Jewish people, around waspy people, around this gender, that gender, trans people. Like, what we're constantly constructing these oversimplified um, stereotypes, but it's not without purpose. It's because if we can sort of back people into unconsciously serving that, no matter who they are, no matter how much damage it does to them psychologically, we can construct these moving parts that maybe make society move a little bit better. We're building an engine. We're building in society, we're building an engine that works and functions and drives forward. And we have an agenda for that. For Western society, it's become almost nothing but capitalism. Bigger, better, faster, stronger, bigger, more. That's what we seem to be doing. We have an agenda. The problem is, and again, I'm not speaking even morally or ethically. The problem is in the long term, the large number of people who get their emotional, psychological limbs lopped off by our simple childlike ideas, they begin to have mental health issues. And then society is like, well, you just have mental health issues. Well, you know, you're born with a chemical imbalance in your brain. Shut up. So silly. So silly. It's just asinine. Chemical imbalance. Shut up. We lop off people's emotional limbs, psychological limbs, even biologically, they were born with certain propensities. We lop that off, and they self emotionally mutilate and try to stay in that box, and then they have mental health issues, and we're like, you have mental health issues. No, society has a problem with using people and putting them in boxes that works for society, but does not at all acknowledge who that person is and what their right is. Being born a conscious sentient being, they have a right to explore and use who they naturally are. And for some women, that means they have a natural tendency to aggression. And people say, well, inhabit your masculine. Shut up. Women are also aggressive. You don't need to make it about masculinity and femininity. Women are also aggressive. As a human animal, women are also aggressive. It's just we put them in a box where they have to filter it certain ways. Like, who are the meanest and the most cruel bullies in middle school? It's the girls. It's the girls with some level of aggression, maybe some trauma, maybe something's going on for them at home, and they have not been socialized to be like, you know what? When the new girl comes in, I get to just get in her face and be like, what's up? When I started public school, I went from a private to a school to public school. I was a tall kid. I was already, I think, like close to 6 foot or 6 foot by the time I was in middle school, high school. As soon as I started, there was any number of guys, like, you have homeroom. So I'm really shy and really unaggressive by nature. And so I'm sitting in homeroom. I'm the new kid. Like, I don't know. I'm just scared shitless. I was raised in a private religious school where everyone's super nice and no one does drugs, and they do later, but you know. The number of guys who just like walked up and blocked the doorway and were like, what's up, dude? You want to fight? Come on, man. Come on. That's just normal. I don't even think teachers were like, knock that off. It's like, well, guys are that way, you know, they're going to work it out. No, I don't want to fight. Go fuck yourself. Things didn't work out well for like the first 6 months until people figured out that I was athletic, and then suddenly, oh, he has a male stereotypical sort of value here. We can accept him. It's okay now. We think we're so smart. Humans think they're so smart. We're idiots. We're literally primitive little animals. The complexity of our brain and our ability to make a rocket has, like, when it comes to how we interact with one another and with self and others, we're just dumb animals. We're so silly. But we won't even admit how silly we are. And the people who pointed out were like, oh, they're just whiners. Oh my God, everything's a problem. Doesn't a man get to be a man? Yeah, if that's actually the kind of man you are, go for it. Do it, dude. I like it. I like the UFC. I like the UFC. I like a badass fight. I like it. Cool. If you're that kind of man, be that kind of man. I like it. But if you're that kind of woman, be that kind of woman. I like it. It's so silly. We have to admit how primitive and silly we are. Women are not more empathetic than men. They've just had their emotional limbs lopped off. If a woman is really dry and rational, again, we're like, well, she's inhabiting her masculine, or she was forced to be that way because she's had to, yeah, maybe, or maybe she's really that way. And you can't just give her credit and let her be that way and allow society to enjoy the benefits of the fact that she's that way. This stuff really pisses me off, but it's also fun to talk about. Women are not more empathetic than men. Men are not more aggressive than women. Men are more physically aggressive, and there is probably biological propensity due to testosterone levels. And we also know that if we inject a woman with testosterone, her aggression and her physicality will probably increase. So there's at least a correlation, if not a causation, between testosterone and aggression. And we shoot ourselves in the foot and we rob women of their natural birthright of getting to just be who they are and also have female genitalia or whatever, wherever you are on the spectrum, or have male genitalia and identify like whatever. I'm not getting into that conversation. What I'm saying is we have to stop truncating women's emotional and psychological limbs and then imposing some faked behavior on them because we've decided that they have to be more empathetic. Do you know easily the larger portion of kids who are badly abused who come in, or adults who come into my practice, who are struggling terribly with like horrible abuse, just really some psychopathic behavior, that far more of them are from mothers who are really, really cruel than fathers? Usually, like we have the stereotype of the violent father, and that exists. Usually, when men hurt their kids, they just abandon, they just bail. They're either emotionally, psychologically completely unavailable and selfish, or they literally bail, they just bail. When women have been horribly abused, or they have the wrong personality type and they probably shouldn't have had kids and they were also horribly abused, maybe it's socialization, maybe there's some maternal instinct. Again, I'm not an expert on that. I'm not speaking on that. It is mothers, and they deserve credit for whatever reason they stick in. But when they're seriously dysfunction, the damage that they do is terrible. And again, don't get it twisted. The fact that we have really distressed women who become really distressed and abusive mothers, and the fact that there's a lot of those, and that maybe I anecdotally see more of those than I see people who come in with developmental trauma receive from fathers, is not because there's something wrong with women. It's because there's something wrong with how we treat women and have treated women for centuries. Don't get what I'm saying twisted. I've had clients who were abusive mothers. I love them. I care for them. I get choked up sometimes when I think about what they've lived with, and I understand why and how they behaved the way they did. We can't solve our problems by establishing as a policy, women are like this and men are like this. Black people are like this. White people are like this. Asian people are like, shut up. Yeah, there is. Like, if a comedian, like, there's going to be trends, right? It's cultural, it's biological, it's, blah, blah, blah. There's so many complex causes of why there are trends within certain groups. There are trends within Jewish people. There are trends within WASPy people. There are trends within Muslims, and a really talented comedian can come up and make a joke about that. And you're like, oh my God, that's so true. That's hilarious. I can't believe she or he said that. But the comedians who are able to do that do it without hatred and without judgment. And they also do it with the lightness of knowing that that doesn't mean shit for an individual Muslim or an individual Jewish person, that they still have to go and just be open to who this person is and the complexity and the many ways that this person can, and to allow that person to teach you. This is empathy. Allow that person to teach you who they are. Listen. Listen. Don't decide. Listen. If there's a propensity in that culture, be prepared for that. Maybe I'm going to see that, but also be prepared for maybe you're not. Don't be that person who's like, well, I know that, Black people that have this kind of life, and because of slavery, so I really want to honor you and treat you this way. Look, the intention's good, but how gross is that if you're the Black person on the receiving end of that, going like, what, you off in your little head and your white experience read some books and decided that you have some perception of who I am and how you should relate to me? Shut up. Knock it off. Well-intentioned white people have this problem all the time. Like, we feel so guilty and we want to do right by Black people, and we want to go, well, I am an ally and I do acknowledge, well, but we're still trying to keep control. We're still trying to control it and have control of it and ensure that I am a good person, so that when I come across my Black friends or a random Black person and I'm interacting with them, I have control over, but I am a good person. You don't have control over that. That Black person might think you're a piece of shit just because you're white. Whatever, maybe that's racist, whatever. You don't have control over that. Yes, it's good to be aware of the history of Black people and white people and what Black people have gone through, but maybe you should just shut up and listen and allow that Black person to present to you as they are, as an individual human being. Maybe that's what they've been asking us for decades, if not centuries. Just start there. Then if you have related to hundreds and thousands of Black people, and many of them are your close friends and some of them are your family members and blah, 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 and you see that there's a general trend and they really deeply trust you, and at a party you make a joke and you're like, dude, you guys are so like this, come on, stop. And they know that you know them at a deeply human level, and they're going to laugh their asses off and go, totally, we're totally like that. But then that's not what white people do. Before they barely know a Black person, they're reading the books and blah, blah, and they do the DEI work and they make up a decision in their head of like, this is what happened to Black people and this is how they experience it. And I was listening, and then the first thing they do is force a Black person into that box of being the victim of that thing, and that's what their life is about. And there might be a Black person who's like, yeah, that's where I'm at. Like, I'm struggling with that. Thank you so much. And they think they're seen, but they're not seeing that white person predetermined how to relate to that Black person. This is a particularly waspy white person problem. We're constantly trying to predetermine. And I empathize with us. We've had all this pressure, whether we deserved it or not. We probably deserved it. all this pressure put on that you don't understand, and you grew up in America where you don't have to deal with other cultures and you have all the power, and all of the information comes that you don't understand or you don't pay attention, and blah, blah, blah. And we feel guilty and we feel all this pressure, and we're good people and we have good intentions, and we're like, okay, so okay, so you're right. Like, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be the shitty racist person who's internalized racism. And so we'll go read some books and we'll pay attention to a couple things, and we'll predetermine how we're supposed to relate to that person. And we don't understand when a person from that group gets pissed at us, because we're like, fuck, I tried everything out. Like, what the hell do you expect from us? You guys are full of shit. No. I sympathize with our position, but that person's not full of shit. All they want for you to do is show up and just pay attention and listen to how they present and how they want to be treated. That's all. It's not rocket science. You know how many clients I would lose if every client who came in, yes, I need to be aware of possibly what it's like to be a gay man. Like, I'm not a good therapist if I'm not paying attention at all or reading literature or, whatever. But can you imagine, and some inexperienced therapists do this, like, don't do this. If you wait to give your speech, you know what the speech is? A lot of therapists know what I'm talking about the speech. Or you see white people do this in like groups with people from other, like they'll wait for their moment to give the speech. The speech goes something like this. I'm aware of my white privilege, and, I wanted to take an opportunity to say that, I see, what's happened with, your group, your gender, your, blah, blah, and I want to be sensitive to that. And, and they're gonna talk through, like a therapist is gonna be more adroit with it, and try to run out an understanding. I'm going to try to run out an understanding early in the relationship to show you that I'm not a bad person. Like, let's say I have a gay male client come in and, this and that, and I've had these experiences. I did some time in whatever center with gay youth, and, I know that it can be very difficult. You know why that's gross? Because I don't know shit about the person sitting in front of me. I'm just running out some predetermined understanding or space for them to exist in that I built in my head. Whether it's well intended or not, I built that in my head. And so I'm still this person who lives in a dominant group, who the reality of our group is enforced on, not through ill intent, just by numbers and power, is spread all over the place. So people have to deal with the deep complexity of who we are all the time, because it's just smeared all over the landscape all the time. But this person, I'm not waiting to find out their deep complexity, their particular personality, how they interacted with their gayness or didn't, or whatever it is, or they don't even give a shit about that. They're just one of those kind of people who, for whatever reason, that didn't end up being a big deal for them. And I built a box in my head, and the earliest possible moment, I placed that box in front of them to go, I'm a good person, I'm a good therapist. Well, how weird that feels. Like, how do you know you're a good therapist? You don't even know who I am yet. You just built a box in your head and went, here, give me credit. Right? People, are we listening? Are we getting this? If you, before you get to know someone at all, build a box in your head, even with good intent of like, I want to honor how badly my people have treated your people, or I want to honor that there are just things that are distinct about you that's important to you, even that you've stated, even that group has stated, this is important to us and we're all on board. It doesn't matter. Don't build a box in your head. And then when you meet one person from that group, go, oh, here's the box I built in my head. I'm a good person. I relate to your people. It's so weird. It's so weird. It's well intended, but it's so weird. It's a weird thing to do to another human being. It's weird. Yes, it's well intended, but it's weird and it's detached And it shows that you have no idea who that person is, and you're not willing to shut up and listen and experience and let them tell you who they are as a distinct individual. So back to women. Anything we build, like, oh, women are much more empathetic than men. No, they're not. You're putting both men and women in a box. And I can tell you, as a therapist, it's not true. We've done things to women historically that has lopped off women's emotional limbs, psychological limbs, that makes it hard for them to empathize. And they're forced to act empathetic. So then you get into this more covert where it's like they make a big show of acting empathetic because we've told them that you're nobody, like you don't count. If you're not that, like this is inherent to you and you're not really a good person as a woman if you don't act that way. And so then what you get is you get these women who fake it and use it to manipulate. Right? Sometimes I hear women when they defend themselves because men have behaved grossly, or there's like some message in the media that's like gross, that's like male grossness towards women or whatever, and women defend themselves and blah blah blah, and they'll say stuff like, well, when we do it, it's meant with love. Shut up. No, it's not. You're pissed and you feel aggressive and you want to retaliate. Good. Why do you have to lie and pretend it's meant with love? But because we're women and we're not like men and we have this thing where we're more loving. No, you're not. You're a human being. You're not more loving. Men are deeply loving when it's part of their personality and is right. And when you get under the hood of them suppressing that because they've been socialized in certain ways. And when I say women are not more loving, I don't mean that women are not loving. I'm saying stop with the gross stereotypes where women defend themselves and they have to hide their aggression and their anger and their rage. And then you get women with deeply, intensely suppressed rage, and they can't admit it because they feel sick in the head that they're that angry. A man would be proud of it. Well, I had this really rough childhood, and you know what? Like I used to have a rage problem, but when they say it, they're kind of like low-key proud of it. I'm a man, like what do you expect? Kick the shit out of me and I'm gonna be pissed and violent. Like I know it's not a good thing and I had to change, but you know what? I was a bad motherfucker when I was a kid. You never hear a woman saying these things. That's not because it's not true about them too. So then you end up with women who have to hide their rage and say stuff like, well, I really mean it with love and I mean to heal. No, you don't. Shut up. You're angry and you feel aggressive and you're full of rage. Good for you. Good for you. Good for you. Because you've been mistreated and shit on. Good for you. I'm down. I'm down. Kick some ass. When men mistreat you, just be like, go fuck yourself. Kick some ass. And if it's physical, yeah, no. Don't put yourself in danger. Whatever, illicit help from society. Can we stop playing these games? I have so much more to say. Like I go on forever, but I have incoming in 10 minutes. So one of my favorite subjects. And, people, it sounds so sensitive, right? It's like, oh, women are not like this. Or I'm like, wow, I find more abusive mothers than fathers who have done serious damage to the kids. It's like, oh, you hate women. No, I want women to be free. I want women to be free. I want them to be free human animals. I want my daughter to be free. If someone mistreats her, I want her to be free to be in a violent rage and to be able to defend herself with no shame. And to know that I will be proud of her if that is what was required. I don't want her to become passive aggressive and try to elicit and try to socially sabotage and elicit anger and violence from men in the situation to go kick somebody's ass. I want her to have every chance to fight for herself. Don't get it twisted. I'm not saying this to take something away from women. I'm saying this because I want women to get a chance after centuries, maybe, I don't know, millennia. I don't know. I'm not a historical expert. But I can tell you in my lifetime and the way my sisters were treated, the way my mother was treated, the way all of the women that I grew up with treated, and how far back that goes, I can tell you that women's psychological and emotional limbs have been whacked off with absolutely no compunction whatsoever, with no shame, just literally like, well, that's who you are. And then when women are rageful, aggressive, whatever, maybe sometimes they're naturally aggressive and that should be rewarded. And maybe sometimes their rage and aggression is a response to abuse, historical abuse. We're like, no, 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 no. You have to act more empathetic. You have to be more empathetic. And so then you get this woman who's actually full of rage, who's actually centered in rage and aggression, who's sitting here faking all of these empathetic behaviors, but covertly hurting people, her own kids, and damaging people and socially bullying people. And the second someone with their eyes open goes, wait a minute, this woman is behaving abusively, everyone's like, no, no, women are way more empathetic. Women are way more, no, well, if she is, no, it's true. If she's doing that out of trauma, she's doing it because she was abused. But when we have prisons full of men who go to prison because they were abused and tormented horribly and then behave badly, we don't get to just go, yeah, but women don't have to take responsibility for their trauma and their aggression and their rage. And it's not good for them. It's not good for them for us to lop that off. It would be better if she could talk to a therapist who says, you're full of rage and aggression. Good for you. I hate what happened to you. I hate it. I hate it. It shouldn't have happened. And guess what? For you to actually get in touch with your care for other people and your love of other people and your ability to accommodate people who are difficult and to actually be kind and strong requires that we admit that you're rightly, deeply rageful and actually aggressive towards other people. And that doesn't mean anything terrible about you. So are lots of men. So, like, forget about men. So are lots of humans. So are lots of humans. Stereotypes do great damage. Comedians can be super, super light and tease things out, and because they're not doing it from a judgmental place, it's funny. You can always tell when it is judgmental because it's not funny. We have to stop doing this to women. Men are empathetic, loving, sensitive, some of them. Women are empathetic, loving, sensitive, some of them. There are men who are naturally aggressive and domineering. There are women who are naturally aggressive and domineering. I haven't really seen any, again, I'm not a researcher, but I'm not seeing any super clear gender separation, especially when you start getting into the spectrum of possible like gender fluidity. Like, it just becomes an asinine discussion. It's silly, it's stupid. All right. If you felt that I called you silly and stupid, I apologize. A lot of that's for me. I mean, I grew up in it, man. You have no idea. I grew up in binary gender separation with stereotypes that were so primitive that it's like, if I told you, you'd just be like, oh, holy shit. Wow. And that doesn't mean that there aren't biological differences. I'm not getting into that conversation. It's not for me to have. I'm simply saying that a lot of these stereotypes do damage to both parties or many different groups. When you stereotype a group, you stereotype the group you're stereotyping, or you damage the group you're stereotyping, and you damage the people who are actually like that stereotype in other groups, who should be entitled to be like that. It's like the same thing that happens in women's liberation. There are lots of women who should go out and work and should take their place on the political stage and should not have children and blah, blah, blah. And so then women's liberation entitled them to do that. And suddenly the very same movement turn around and shit on the women who actually should have kids and who enjoy running their home and managing the business that is a home and managing the complexity and the beauty and the incredible dedication it takes to raise human beings. And suddenly they're persona non grata, they're a piece of shit. And actually the women's liberation movement was the worst in abusing them. And then men turned around and tried to leverage that abuse and sometimes tried to enforce the stereotype that women should only be in the kitchen and blah, blah, blah. And again, like, it's an agenda where it's manipulation from all sides. Shut up. Don't put anybody in any box. Some women should raise kids at home. Some men should raise kids at home. Some women should not have kids. Some women should take their place on the political stage, on the business stage, in the science stage. Some women should not take any place anywhere, and they should be a hermit, and they should go live in the outback in Alaska. Get over it. Humans have a massively wide, complex spectrum. Get the fuck over it. Stop putting people in boxes. Wait for them to tell you who they are. Wait for your experience of them. Always explore, explore, explore. Explore more, explore more. Ask more questions. What is this like for you? How do you experience this? What happens when X, Y, or Z? I noticed this. Like, what does that mean? I really enjoy this about you. Do you notice that about yourself? Am I imposing something on you? That's just how I experience you. I really like sitting with you, but you're mostly a mystery to me, and you probably will stay that way because you are you. I would love to continue to experience you, to learn more and more about the mystery of you. But I can't do it if I put you in a box. Okay, I got to end. So I'm just going to end it right there, okay? Take it to heart, guys. Seriously, your life will be way better if you stop putting people in boxes. All right. I love you guys. Have a great morning. Talk to you next time.
Just for today, everything's okay. Everything's okay.